I'm going to just ask a straight up question to both Lynn and Faith. Did you think anything that Taylor said was wrong or out of context or had a different motive? Lynn, you
No.
first.
Oh,
Faith,
sorry.
no, I
Please,
guess
please.
you guys are
I
both
could.
to say no. So I totally get it. So what I want to really frame here is that I do want to say on at least, we don't speak for the entire Asian community, but for people who literally just met her and had the conversation, we felt the genuineness and appreciated her admission of that. From the bottom of my heart, I'm so sorry you got a lot of those comments because we certainly never got even an ounce of that vibe, nor did we think that. And I know, Regina, you kind of wanted to comment on something on there, so I wanted to give you the space as well.
Yeah, two things. One of the comments I saw was like, well, they laughed and they didn't say their stereotypes. Well, one thing that was edited out. Me and Joseph both said something. And then another thing is, and I'm glad I saw a couple of comments bring it up, is that you have to stop assuming why people do certain things. I'll be honest, I laugh when I'm nervous. I'm a very awkward person just naturally. So I get the giggles easily. So I was feeling nervous, awkward. And then I was thinking about one particular case where a person called me out on it. And that case was pretty funny because they're like, do you honestly think that 1 billion people would all be Hindu? And this is like a Southeast Asian, regarding Indian people. Because when I was growing up, I thought all Indian people were Hindu. And when they posed it to me like that, yeah, I'm like, yeah, that was stupid. So in that moment, I thought about that. And because they made it as a joke to educate me, I laughed about it because I was like, yeah, that was really dumb that I thought that. So people just need to stop assuming how people should react or even what's going through their minds necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Regina, that's so true. Because like I said, people are not as educated. I don't think people sometimes are as woke or as educated as they like to think they are, or they like to come off, right? There are some people, they do the work, they do the homework. And then there are those that watch YouTube videos, or they watch some video they saw on TikTok, or they heard in the classroom. And all of a sudden, instead of understanding the context of something, they're just looking for somebody to correct, right? And so I call them like comment warriors, right? But I think, we're living in a time of comments and not conversations. And so just like a soundbite, right? You can take a clip of some stuff that someone says, like you and I, Regina, and even Taylor, we talked about from our end of things, just looking at like the way that even Black people are stereotyped and how that makes us feel, because we talked about positive stereotypes and we talked about negative stereotypes, and the even positive stereotypes that we talked about, even in the Black community, that did not really make the cut. But one thing we talked about was that a lot of things that Black people are valued for have to do, and a lot of times feels like it has to do with what was connected to slavery, from the perspective of what you can produce, or your physical attributes, or your sex appeal, and everything like that. And so, but then you as a person, like your soul, your mind, your intellect.
You're like a media puppet.
Exactly. And so I think in a lot of ways, and I mean, that obviously we can talk about, that plays into the whole minstrel thing. We can even, we don't, I mean, I could go there for days, but it's like you'll take the stuff that you like, or the stuff that's commercialized, which I call that cultural colonization, because you take the things that you like from a culture, but then you don't involve the person as a whole and give them credit and honor. And so I think that across the board, when we were discussing these things, it's conversations to say, okay, look, there's different stuff that has occurred on the spectrum. There's ignorances that we've had growing up, because when you're a kid, you don't know everything about the world, right? Just like when you're an adult, you don't know everything about the world. So the only way for us to learn more is if we're constantly having conversations where, like with y'all, when I talked to y'all, I was like, well, dang, like this is confronting some of the even perspectives that I've had, or things I didn't even know I had, because I wasn't maybe conscious of it, because maybe I'm not living in a community where either I'm around a lot of Asian people, or where Asian people are communicating and engaging with me on a regular basis. So I think for a lot of our community, it's kind of more out of sight, out of mind, between Black and Asian communities. And so because of that, it's like, okay, well, I might be looking over the fence at your community and you're looking over the fence at my community, but we're not like sitting down at a table and having a conversation to be like, you know what, at the end of the day, there's more that connects us than separates us,
Well, with that, I kind of want to actually throw it back to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
I just want to say one thing about the stereotypes. I think that they asked us, what do we think about I can't exactly remember the exact question, but this was after the have we stereotyped each side. This was more about like, do you think that there are good stereotypes? And we talked about how, and I remember I specifically said, I don't think there is such a thing as good or bad. I think good stereotypes can lead are dangerous. And I said specifically, and that's how we talked about you, Faith, like the whole, Asians are good students. And like that can be to someone, to an Asian person who has ADHD or has a
Yeah.
learning disability,
See,
that can
yeah,
be really
which is me.
difficult.
Like, I have a learning disability. I have that one where you see words wrong. I even forget the name of it.
Dyslexia?
Dyslexia. I'm
Okay.
dyslexic. So that's why I failed in school. And that's why I brought up that I was straight C student. Like, it's not because I'm dumb, it's just because I just couldn't articulate properly.
Mhm.
But I
Well, you're a
don't
legend.
feel
Don't worry. You're a
I don't
legend.
I don't feel like I should be part of the stereotype where we're all biochemists or nurses or anything like that.
Yeah. I just think that because the audience was talking about how, oh, they didn't talk more about the Asian side and how, good stereotypes are dangerous to us, and I'm like, we did. I mean, Jubilee didn't include it for whatever reason, and I understand there was a time constraint, but we did talk about how, stereotypes are bad pretty much all around,
Right.
and good stereotypes
Yeah.
harm people as well.
Yeah, I think, and then Lynn, I would love to also get your take because I think I mentioned kind of like I grew up in what I would absolutely admit as almost white privilege. I got benefit of every single good stereotype and no one ever questioned it. So I fully admitted that. And it's something that I think I'd be very disingenuous if I said, no, I got it on my merits. No, somebody pitted me against another minority. And this is why they wanted to elevate me to have a narrative, right? So I think a lot of people take that narrative the other way, where it's like, wait, ignore what the East Asian Korean guy said. Like, let's talk about what the black girl
Yeah.
said about this thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's an important point. So Lynn, I would also, since you and Faith are also other Asians, did you have any comments on that part of things?
I want to point out that during that stereotype question, I also stepped forward, and I also, like I said, I went into this with full honesty and like, who hasn't stereotyped someone. I also agree that like you do grow as a person and you change your ideas about people when you get to know them, when you have these conversations. And no one hated on me for stepping forward. I just want to like point that out, that during that question, all the hate were for the Black Americans, but not for me, the one Asian American that actually stepped forward. So I just want to point that out. The other thing too about, yes, you were saying about having, white privilege. I personally don't identify as that, but when I had mentioned in that first question that we had about me being seen as white by other Asians when I'm in a full group of Asian people because of how I act, probably because I was raised in the Midwest, there's a lot of white people there. A lot of people thought that I was white when,
Right.
it's very interesting because maybe I talk white, maybe I have white mannerisms, but that is part of who I am
No,
because of where I'm from. So
and then I would like to add too, when you said that you were white, which they completely cut out, where I said I identify, when I was younger, I would denounce me being Filipino. I would only say that I'm full white, and they had left that out.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think all this conversation, right? And let's get to one that I think just brought really bad, I think, like misconception, right?
Real
So
quick, Tony, can I just jump in real quick on that thing that
please.
Lynn said, because I thought that was really interesting. Lynn, when you were talking about because you brought up the model minority myth, I think you and Tony
Yeah.
Lynn did.
talked about that for a little bit, actually, in a pretty good amount. And one thing you talked about is how that has been used in a lot of ways to kind of like pit Asians and Black people against each other, kind of more like, okay, these groups are also, they're not Black, but they're also not white. This group is like another minority and they're succeeding, kind of like, why aren't you? And that's
Right.
been used in a lot of ways to pit the two against one another.
Yeah.
But what I got out of, and just as someone that was in the room, right, listening to both of you guys, dialogue on this, what I got out of when you said, I feel like I'm the white one in the room, It
Mhm.
wasn't that you were, if anyone that was listening could know, it wasn't that you were saying you were white. It was just you saying that because you don't fit, and this once again goes back into stereotypes,
Right.
because you don't fit the norm of an Asian stereotype, right? When you're in that room and people are seeing you that way, it's now like, okay, you have now your Asian brothers and sisters that might be in that same room. And so now you feel that pressure. And so I just wanted to say just very quickly, I know that's also something that us as Black people go through, just to kind of bring a common thread. Because, you know, depending on, you know, where you're from or how you grew up, there's a way that people expect Black people to talk. There's a
Right.
way they expect them to identify, music they listen to, the clothes that they wear, the you know, the people they associate with. And so when you walk into a room, and you know, you know, we code switch all the time. You take off one hat, put on another, but it's just kind of like you walk into a room, even as a Black person, and you are maybe around a lot of other like white people, and there may be other Black people in the room. Everybody, quote unquote, and I say quote unquote educated, right? Because you don't know people's education. Just because they might talk a certain way doesn't mean they're not smart, doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. But a lot of times people will look at you and be like, oh, well, you're the good one. Why can't they be like you? And growing up, that was, I thought first they were just talking about me and other kids, like not even just of different races. But what I began to realize when I would hear stuff like that, that was them saying, well, why can't you talk like other, or why can't other Black kids be like you? And I began to take that as less of a compliment. So I heard you talking about that. And when you were saying that, it just kind of like brought to my mind the fact that we go through that in our community too.
Yeah, yeah. I think, like you said, we have a lot of similarities. I think one thing that's maybe a little bit different in as far as my experiences is I have been asked several times because of the way I speak and how I act if I'm adopted. And that's probably because I'm Asian.
I mean, to me, you sound Asian, but I don't know what, like,
I honestly don't even know what that means, to be honest.
I've heard that and I kind of can hear it, but I mean, closing my eyes, I imagine you were an Asian woman.
Yeah, yeah. And then going back to the model minority myth, I know we might get into this a little bit later, but I think we're seeing the consequence of model minority myth currently with the current events and what's happening, because time and time again, we are being pitted against each other, and it's all because of white supremacy. It's all because of how white supremacy defines us as Asians, how they define Black people, and the situation that we're in currently. I think that is part of the negative consequence of the model minority myth.
Well, going
Can
back,
I just say that as someone who grew up around a lot of East Asians, I completely knew and understood what you were saying because I've heard people, like I had friends who would describe, because the dynamics at my school was a lot of the Asians hung out with each other, but then there was like a small group of Asians who hung out. There was like a popular white kid group, like a lot of white kids who were like popular. I hate to say it, but that's kind of how it was in my high school. And there was a couple of Asian kids who only hung out with the popular white kids. Like they would just only hang out. And like I would hear some of the, like a couple of my Asian girlfriends would be like, oh yeah, she's a banana, like a banana. They'd say banana, and they call and say like that she was basically white on the inside, Asian on the outside. So to me, the fact that, because I saw comments who were saying like they didn't understand what you were saying, I'm like, stop being disingenuous. Like we know. I mean, I feel like that's kind of
I'll be honest and say that I have done that to other Asians as well. I'll be honest and say that too.
I've done it to other Black people. I've been accused of talking white. I've been accused of, well, aren't you half white? No. And I've done it to other Black girls where I've seen Black, and I'm like, oh, she only hangs out with white. So it's.
I do it to my own people.
So I think I want to get back to kind of, I think one of the biggest comments I think we want to address is, I think, Regina, what you said about how this country is built. We understood that context, but I definitely want to give you the space here because I know we're trying to get there. I want to give you the space now to be able to address that because I think we are all here, the five of us, in solidarity of what the intent was and what it was. So I want to give you a space to address that if possible.
Sorry guys, I keep going on mute and off on mute because of what there's like background noises. Yeah, let me address that. First things first. That's why I put the context of first and second generation and before I even mentioned my statement. A lot of my statements in general was referring to first and second generation Asian attitudes, not Asian attitudes of I would say the first Asians that arrived here. That I would say that represents probably 1% of the Asian population, and they have a different viewpoint. And so a lot of to me, the reason why I would say, quote unquote, we're not allies is not due to, I would say, the minority within Asian people. I would say it's really because of the misinformation and lack of knowledge of the first and second generation. Now, going deeper into that statement, because I think, I'll be honest, there was a couple, they just kind of took apart that statement. So some of the people had a problem with the fact that I said, anti-Blackness in the Asian community. I'll be honest, I'm not backing down on that. Every Asian person I met said that they have anti-Blackness. There's even anti-Blackness in the Black community. If we want to get to it, there's an anti-Blackness world problem. So I'm going to be honest, I don't really, to me, that's not an arguing point. That's just a fact. But I think where I want to even add clarity on is that when I say my country and the country my family built, I think it's not to say that only Black people built United States. What I'm saying is that us as minorities, we have to take our piece, we have to own it and say, this is our country too. Too much we give that narrative to white people to say, oh, my country, and they let them dictate how we should act in the country that we helped build. So when I say my country, I mean my country as I'm an American person. And to be frank, anybody that's coming over here with oppressive attitudes, be they white, Black, Asian, whatever, and they have an idea to oppress somebody here, I'm not going to be rooting for you. Even if it doesn't even involve me, I'm not going to be rooting for you to come over here with those attitudes. I would hope that you adjust your attitudes and just the way that you're going to be, because honestly, we don't need any more of that. America already has enough issues for us to keep perpetuating negative stereotypes about people and then oppressing people that have, helped build this country. Be it, because like I said, I can even taking Black people out of the equation. If you're East Asian and you have negative attitudes about Filipino people, and honestly, Filipino people help build this country. If you have those negative attitudes, then I still say that's the same problem. This is that Filipino person helped build this country, and you're coming over here and being rude. That's messed up. So that was really my main point. It wasn't to say that they don't have a right to immigrate to this country, that is all first, second generation Asians that are a problem. What I'm just saying is that that colorism, classism, colorism turns into racism, where they elevate white people and degrade Black people. They carry that attitude with them over here. And honestly, they may feel like they're not acting in oppressive ways, but if you hold that, it's going to come out into your actions. And I've seen it. And like I said, I didn't bring up some of the most racist actions that I had because they're very close to my heart. And I didn't want to bring that out because I'll be honest, I'll be ready to fight for some of the ones that are close to my heart. I'll be like, no, let's go, because you're trying to be funny. But, so I did want to focus on the fact of it wasn't xenophobic or racist. What I was getting to is the fact of making sure that you're not coming over here being racist and you're not coming over here making someone feel uncomfortable in a space that they helped create. That was my main point.
No, and I appreciate that. And I know everybody kind of wants to add on there, but I do think that, since you were the one so unfairly kind of associated with that, I do want to give the last word. And actually, one of the things that I think, if you guys want, like, we're already in 50 minutes plus on this video. I think, if you guys want us to talk about some of the real things that didn't make it about, a lot of the current events, a lot of the state of Asian American, Black America, those things weren't even asked, let alone kind of on the prompt, but we discussed it internally. So if you guys want that, put that in the comments and we'll definitely create another video, because I think all of us have different things. One thing that I also want to say from a Asian community is that there's more than 10 languages that are happening in the Asian Peninsula, right? That entire area. So we are not one language or one culture. There's so many multiple variations in there. And I think it's very disingenuous of Asian Americans who would say like, I was part of the internment camp. No, you weren't. You're not a Japanese American, nor do you have heritage. I built the railroads. No, you're not. You were Korean, and you weren't forcefully moved. It was a Chinese, you know what I mean? But I feel like some Asian Americans will take that narrative and fit it into theirs when it's convenient, and that is not okay.
Going back to you, Asians, we like to come together when it's convenient. And then when it's not convenient, we're just like, oh, I'm better than you. And you guys over there, you guys don't mean anything because you're not helping us right now.
No, for sure.
Is a big issue.
Yeah. So I guess, with that, Taylor, I also feel like you were, there's a lot of things that you expressed, but is there in your mind, like any other lasting thoughts about some of the comments or just, just the conversations that we had that you kind of want to wrap this up with?
I think I just want people to understand that I think there were some people who came in to this, some of the audience members who came in watching this video wanting to see a fight. They wanted to
Yeah.
see us be very um, rude towards each other and combative. And they didn't get that with this video. And I think there's a problem in our society where we constantly want fighting.
Mhm.
And I think for us to be able to come together and have this conversation, I think is amazing. Like I had some people, old friends from when I was in high school, reach out to who are East Asian, reach out to me and be like, "Wow, Taylor, I really didn't know you felt this way. I didn't know you dealt with this. I'm really happy. You articulated yourself very well. Like, I'm proud of you, and I hope we can connect at some point to talk." So for me, it was very healing, and I just wish that some of the audience weren't, because to me it feels like they were like against especially the black side from the beginning. And I think, I hate to say it, but anti-blackness is everywhere. It's in every community. It's in the black community. We have issues with serious issues with colorism. We have issues intraracial, whether it's black Americans versus continental Africans versus Caribbean people. We have those issues. So it's very rampant. And I think there were some people that were already had their minds made up and were just like, because they don't like black people, they're anti-black. So they were, anything we did, it doesn't matter what we said.
They were there to start fire.
Yeah, they were there to criticize us. And I think that's just so unfair, but it's a way of life. I'm used to it. But I just hope that the people who, because the people who are clearly, because there were very anti-black comments that I don't know if you guys saw, but I saw them.
Oh yeah.
And I don't care about, I'm gonna be honest, I don't give two shits about those people. I care about the audience who were genuinely confused, who wanted a more in-depth conversation. And I hope that this video can give them more context. And I really hope that those people, because I can tell they didn't come with such a closed, mind. I hope that this gives them more answers. And I just want to say that I really enjoyed doing the video. I enjoyed meeting y'all. We all follow each other. We said we all follow each other on Instagram. So yeah, I just hope that the people who really wanted to have more understanding got the understanding.
No, I appreciate that. And I think we all talked about it in a closing prompt. And Lynn, I'll start with you. One of the closing things I think would be great to is like, what happened after that shoot and what has that changed about the perception of Blacks and Asians? And I'll start with you, Lynn, and then I'll go right to Joseph afterwards.
Yeah, so after the shoot, I felt like I got to understand all of you guys more as individuals, honestly, than what we were all categorized as, Black versus Asian. When the video came out, it actually prompted a conversation with my parents yet again, because I made them watch it so they could actually hear and understand everybody's perspective. And we had an even more in-depth conversation about their experiences versus mine, because that is a whole nother situation. And I feel like it really helped to kind of open my parents' eyes to the Black community and what they go through as well, and versus what we go through. So it was really, really nice. And then me reading through the comments, because I was obsessed for like the first week. I was reading through all of them. I kept going, new comments. What are they saying now? And I learned a lot about the Asian community in the comments. Wow, like very vocal about there, a lot of them are anti-Black, which I was very
I was
like,
ashamed. As an
isn't this
Asian
video
person.
supposed to help you understand a little bit?
That's
So
what the point was.
I was very, very surprised by that. And I learned what a boba liberal is. I never knew what that was until
It's a term, yes.
they labeled us as that. So I had to Google it. And then also
Whoa, what?
It's a boba liberal. It's we'll get into it later offline.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to go Google that later.
Yeah, I'll set you straight on that.
Yeah. And then the other thing too, a lot of criticism from the Asian community about us, not just calling us boba liberals, but the fact that, and a lot of it has to do with the editing, but a lot of them saying that we didn't stick up for ourselves. But that didn't really make sense to me because there was no verses. It's not
Right.
about sticking up for ourselves. It's just about having a conversation. There is no argument. It's just literally an open conversation. A lot of them said that we were normalizing racism towards Asians. I honestly didn't understand that either because I didn't feel like I was being attacked for being Asian. So again, like a lot of these comments, it was just interesting because I feel like they totally misunderstood the the whole purpose of why we were there together. So
Joseph,
what I learned.
Joseph, on you, man.
Yeah, man. I would say that, I mean, it began for me when you were, I don't know, there was one time you and I were sitting like right next to each other, or yeah, pretty much like in the same space. And a couple times where you teared up. And it impacted me, bro. Like just hearing you express your feelings and talking about like, hey, like, you know, some of the stuff that we've done or said about the Black community, you know, it's like we wouldn't give that same grace, or you haven't seen that has been extended. And that really kind of affected me because I've seen that across the board. But, you know, after the conversation we all had, you know, I've been finding that as I'm driving, you know, maybe you drive and you pull up to a light, right? And you turn and you look and you see you know, an Asian person, right? Or you're walking in the store and you see an Asian person. The conversation just replays in my head every time we talk. And like I said, at the end of the video, getting close to the end of the video, when the question was, can Asians coexist with Black people peacefully? And I was saying, you know, I think we can do it, but I just don't think we see enough examples of it, right? It's constantly like we're, you know, I'm here, you're here, we don't speak to each other enough. And so I believe that for me now, I've been trying to have, you know, more conversations and ask more questions, because I think if you don't see enough representation of individuals fairly and properly, especially in media, you do not see Asian people really in the media, specifically not as leads, specifically, and it's not usually in the context of like something that is strong or, you know, at the forefront. And so what we can start doing is seeing each other in caricature form, right? Where it's like these ideologies that people have compiled together based off of limited and uninformed experiences that have been applied to the whole. Then now, if I'm starting to treat my Asian brothers and sisters as a caricature, right? When I know that's been my experience my whole life, you know, how can I fight for my own, you know, freedom, right? And the freedom of the future people that are coming without having to stop and say, okay, wait a minute, but what about that person? Because they're still a human being, right? And so I would just say the conversation that we all had really left me on just this kind of like mental journey of being like, wow, let me reach out more. Let me try to understand more. And so I think that was really, really beautiful.
Regina, I would
Tony,
love
can
for you
I
to follow
add one
that.
more thing? And I know because I was mostly talking about my last comment, but one thing I want to say my takeaway was also, and something that Taylor brought up earlier, is that having that defense mechanism up. And that was one of the things that I challenged myself after our discussion. Because I'm gonna be honest, when I first walked into the room, I would never have thought you thought that way, Tony. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I think even though we don't want to admit those things, we do have a stereotype of, oh, he's an Asian man, so he's probably gonna think this way. And I'm gonna be honest, even when I first walked in, I looked at, it was both you and Joseph, and I saw Lynn, and I was like, okay, I need to ask a question where I can sit. I asked Lynn because, to be frank, I have some biases versus male versus female, where I trust women more than I even trust men. And so just I had to unpack some of those things of, okay, those stereotypes, even though I may be working on them, they still play in the back of my head of, why did I walk past Tony? Why did I walk past Joseph? Why did I feel like, oh, Lynn looks approachable, right? So I think it was me challenging my own defense mechanisms with other people and other ethnic groups, but then also some of my gender bias, because I realized that I did that later on.
No,
I'm sorry, Regina, I'm offended.
Sorry, I was like, I
You're
looked up like,
canceled.
I'm an
kidding,
African woman.
Cancel.
Sorry.
I'm kidding,
So
I'm
fun.
kidding.
Faith, what about you? I know, if anything, that you've had years and decades of understanding between the white, black, Asian, and all that. But like after this conversation, did you get something new, or did you start thinking anything differently?
Yeah, actually I did. So, like I said, I never had like negative ideologies about black people, unless you say that they're good at basketball is being racist. But I mean, I love me some basketball. So, but I did change, like, because I did think like how the media portrayed black people in 2019 to 2020 was in a very horrible way. So I was thinking that you guys were like going to be SJWs coming in to like attack whatever we say. But going to me being like part white, so I think I looked at it as with another perspective too, as a white person, because I was mainly raised by my mom, who is white. But it made me really just think about they're a person and just listen to them as a person. Yeah, I remember Joseph and we were talking about how we hate it when people say, oh, we don't see color, because we do. But like I see them for humans, like
Right.
what we should, what as Americans, that's how we should perceive our neighbor.
No, appreciate you saying that. And then Taylor, I'll give you the last word. The one thing that I'll add is that it made me realize that I had these conversations way too privately and not as vocally when I have the platform to be able to do so. And I think it made me realize that there's so much more conversations that's needed to be had. And I appreciate everybody that has come before me and come after me that has been way more vocal about this and in so many different levels. So, one of the things that I had to check myself on is that what good is it if you've only articulated this in a small place when you can actually have a larger platform and had a larger platform, and you haven't been doing that? That's almost as bad as perpetuating the entire stereotype. So,
Yeah.
I think it gave me more of a sense of responsibility. Not that like I'm aiming for it, but it's also, I think, if I have these viewpoints, I can't keep silent. So, I think you guys all inspire me because you guys have been all very shameless is not the right word, but you guys are willing to have these conversations more openly, more publicly
Selfless.
through the selfless. Yes. And, that's what made me think it's something that I just, I was never quiet about it, but nobody knew it because I was private. And that's, if a tree falls in the forest, no one hears it, is exactly that. So, with that, I definitely do want to give the last word to Taylor, and yeah, I'll leave it there.
Well, as I said before, well, first off, Tony, I really do want to say that when you kind of started getting teary-eyed, because I don't think I ever told you this, but it really like moved me, and it made me feel like, wow, this is someone who has so much empathy, and like his empathy is like overflowing. Like
Yeah.
this really hits him. And so I really appreciated that, because I'm gonna be completely honest. I've never seen someone who's like not black have like so much in person, at least, have like so much emotion over something like that. And so I I really do appreciate that. I think you're amazing. So I think all of you, I really do appreciate meeting all of you and like being able to keep in touch with y'all. And this experience, even though like reading through the comments was,
I mean,
I
we all agree on bad editing.
yeah, I really do cherish this experience.
Yeah.
I've cherished meeting all y'all, and I hope that this video at least can bring at least, like I said before, a little more understanding. But I also hope that people can have more of these conversations in public. Because I think you see on Twitter, it's like Black Twitter, and then there's Asian Twitter, and like people stay in their little boxes, and it's the same in real life. People stay in with their groups for the most part, and I just hope that people can watch this or watch the original video and decide to meet more people out of their ethnic group, and to have more of these type of conversations, because there's more people having these type of conversations, there's more understanding, and then there's more empathy.
Right.
You know, so, and I guess that's what Jubilee, says there about empathy. So I'm glad that Jubilee gave us the platform, and I'm grateful for that Jubilee gave us the platform to do this. I just hope that people can start doing this themselves in real life, because that's how we battle racism. That's how we battle stereotypes. When people get to know each other and they say, oh, well, no, there's stereotype about, Asian people being super smart, or Asian people not speaking up, or whatever. That's not true, because I met Lynn and she speaks up, and I met Tony and I met Faith, or black women are ghetto and black men are thugs. But no, I met Joe and I met Taylor and I met Regina. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for other people.
Oh, all love. No, I think this conversation is important. Everybody, the fact that we're actually, for behind the scenes, we're filming this on a weekend, so it's not like we're, we're literally making time to be able to do this. Not just
before Valentine's Day. Let's just say that.
Well, I'm single this Valentine's Day.
I ain't doing nothing.
I ain't doing nothing.
Same old as you, bro. So it's all good.
I'm alone.
So funny. Yeah, but no, we genuinely wanted to have this conversation. I think this is definitely, probably, the sense I'm getting, this is definitely not the last conversation you hear from all 6 of us together as a group and various things. So, again, I appreciate everybody's time here. And I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation, and hopefully got a lot of context into not only behind the scenes what it's like to be casted, but also just a lot of the other nuances that goes into this. And I guess maybe we're lifting a veil off the Hollywood curtain a little bit, but it's not like you guys didn't know, and you can research it. We're just giving you the real take.
It's public secrets. That's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll end this here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And let's put all the descriptions down. You can follow us and have more conversations and things like that. But yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys in another video. And thank you guys for making your Saturday night, spending it with all together. It was really great. Therapy session for me, really.
No, it's nice to talk to everybody. Everybody has still come from a different walk of life too, which is, I think, why we all kind of get along with each other.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.